Good evening and welcome back to Casey's Treasure Corner. Tonight's story comes from a time frame right around 2010. I was working in Burbank Canyon, that is in Truth or Consequence, New Mexico, in the Caballo Mountain Range. And for this particular mine owner, I was doing a survey for some lost tunnels or void spaces close to their mine shaft that purportedly had gold bars and was a storehouse for either Jesuit or Spanish treasures coming out of the mines themselves and then being transported to the ships in Mexico. And this was kind of a stopover, a storehouse place that they would put it. And I knew nothing about this when I got to the job site. It was just a straight-on job. Go in with ground-penetrating radar and electromagnetic surveyors and ERT, electrical resistivity tomography, and run these tests to see if we can find these tunnels. And about, I don't know, maybe 75 feet from their main shaft, I did pick up a tunnel. It was about 77 feet down. And that tunnel, I think, was at about maybe 60 feet down. If I remember correctly, they had to go on a slight angle, about 10 degrees and 70 feet. They would have pretty much ran right into the side of it. So they were making plans to get their blasting permits and all that good stuff to get that job done. And while I was there, the father of this gentleman that I was working with, he was on site, and he had known a lot of information about the area, and I asked him to tell me the story about this gold and where he thought it came from. And he proceeded to tell me the story of Doc Noss finding a huge treasure in Victoria Peak, which is on the right now it's on the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. But at the time when he found it in 1937, he was out hunting and it started raining, and he decided that he was going to, kind of get some cover under a rock ledge. And under this rock ledge, he moved a rock or a boulder out of the way and was kind of covering up a cave hole. And he took refuge in the cave hole and decided he was going to follow the cave a little further down, and it went into the mountain, and he got to a location like a fault line. And inside of that fault line was a chicken ladder, what we call a chicken ladder, or a telephone pole, or a straight piece of lumber that was a tree, and it has notches cut in it all the way down like stairs. And it was propped up in the crack. And when he took it down to the bottom, there was just vast amounts of gold stored there and all kinds of stuff. But the crack was so tiny, it basically had to squeeze through that little crack where this telephone pole tree was to get down into the location. And these bars were pretty big. And the old man proceeded to tell me that Doc Noss took a bunch of bars out of that location and hit them all over the Caballos and near the bottom side of White Sand and the Twin Peaks Range. And there was a lot of stories and data and stories from his partners, and he didn't have any partners, but the living ones at the time had gave statements about different places he was taking this treasure all over. And the old man believed that part of that treasure was in this mountain that he and his son were trying to get into. And he also told me that Doc Noss had brought treasure to famous places in that location called Bat Cave and Slave Cave, and just all these cool locations up in these mountains that were really hard and inaccessible to get to. It's just hot and dry and with like red sandstony rock, but there was natural gold there too. And while I was doing the surveys, I did find natural gold in the creeks and the creek beds. So that was intriguing. My days off, I would actually go out and look for some of this panning, do what we call dry panning. No water around, so you have to kind of blow it like with a, like almost like a leaf blower, and it kind of does the same thing as the water does to separate the gold from the sand. So I was fiddle-farting around with that stuff, and the old man had told me that, about the story, and he told me that Doc Noss had taken some gold bars up to Bat Cave, and he could only carry so many up to the face of this waterfall, and then there was, to the left of the waterfall, there was this crack that went up, and he would kind of work his way up the crack. It was a pretty tall crack too. It was probably about 35, 40 feet. But he would use the crack to climb up, straight up, and then go to back cave as opposed to walking around the long way. And he could almost drive up to about maybe 75 feet below the crack as opposed to the long way, which is a good 45-50 minute hike from not too far away, but far enough. You got to climb up over a waterfall and traverse, switch back the hill all the way up. And if you were trying to carry gold up there, it would have been a whole lot tougher to do. So the story goes, according to the old man, that Doc Noss has taken the gold bars out of Victoria Peak, and he's squirreling them away up in Back Cave and some of the caves up there. And he takes piles of gold out of his trunk of his car, and he puts them at the base of the crack. And then, one by one, he climbs up through the crack and brings them up there. Or I would think he'd be smart enough to put a rope down from the top. It would be a lot simpler. But hey, I wasn't there. But he tells me that he's doing this, and there's an Indian watching him the whole time. So every time he backs up to the thing, and he's offloading the gold bars. And one night he gets in there late and offloads this big pile of gold bars out of his trunk and makes a couple trips up the hill, pulls up some bars, and then finally he decides, I guess he just left the pile of bars there, figuring there's nobody around. So he drives off the hill, and the Indian decides that he's going to take the bars and go hide them away. He doesn't want a white man in there. So he takes it to a location that's marked. It's a red hump of a hill that's midway up the slope, and the front hill in front of it blocks the height of the back hill. So when you look at it from the bottom, you only see this one little red hill, pretty big red hill. You see this one big red hill that sticks up, and then you see like the main cliff face behind it. So you don't even think that there's another little red hill behind it. And I never did. So that's supposedly where the gold was buried. And the Indian had taken it up there, and behind the little red hill was a shaft, and that shaft went down into a short tunnel that went down another chicken ladder, and at the bottom of that was going to be this gold. It was covered by ironwood boards, according to the old man's story. And he said that he had spoken to the family of this Indian who had told him this story back in the 40s and 50s, right after this had occurred. Doc Noss was taking gold out of the cave in 37. So, and everybody was looking for this hillside. I didn't think nothing of it. I just kind of went about my business and, did the scan work during the week. And then on Saturday and Sunday, I had my days off. It was about a month-long job. So, I would go out hiking and just, looking around. This place was awesome. It's really cool. All kinds of caves and holes and just all kinds of stuff. High desert country along a craggly mountain with lots of folklore about Indians and treasure and the settlers coming through, and the Indians, taking all their belongings and disappearing into the mountain and coming out on the far north side, and they would always be lost by the people pursuing them. So all kinds of cool stuff. But I decided that one day, one Saturday morning, I was going to follow this wash up towards this red hill and just take it up as far as I could on an ATV. And I was able to push my luck all the way almost up to the headwater of this wash, until the boulders got too big, and I parked the ATV there. And at that point, I'm right next to the big hill now. I look up to my right, and I can see, it's a steep climb right to this big red hill, but I can see that there's like a little saddle behind it. So I want to go up there, and I climb up the hill, and right behind the big hill is this little red patch of hill sticking up. And as I walk up closer to it, I see in the front side, it's got like a little cave niche type of thing, and it's ground level and goes back in maybe, 3 or 4 feet, maybe. It wasn't much, but it was longer than it was wide. It was about maybe 15 feet long, kind of 4 foot back, and only 3 or 4 foot tall. I squatted down to kind of look around in there, and when I did, I could see these petroglyphs up in the back end of that cave. It was pretty awesome. So I took some pictures and was checking it out, sitting in there in the shade. It was hot, probably around 100. And, I'm just drinking water and hanging out. And then I decided I'd go around the backside of it. And when I went around the backside of it, there was this, I could see this indentation right along the back edge of this slope of this little mound. And it was all rock, this mound. It was like decomposed, and a lot of it had flaked away over the course of time, like sandstone and granite and, I don't know, little shards and pieces of rocks all over. But all like a red, rusty red color. Maybe it was like a form of volcanic rock, but not lava. Anyway, I see this like indentation in the backside of this mound, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, it definitely looks like there's some kind of mine or something there. There's just no reason for this dent there to be there. So it's like a settled hole. So my curiosity is like really getting the best of me, and I go up and I look closer at it, and it definitely is. I could tell like the backside of the hill as it came down was just, sheer granite and kind of flaky and falling off, and that kind of just disappeared right into this what looked to be a hole. The two sides, or the front three edges of it, it was, I could see where it was cut away and chiseled away. It dropped down like maybe 6 or 8 inches on either side, all sides. You could see it was a hole, and somebody had either backfilled it or all the stuff had scaled off the mountain and filled it in anyway. So it was really curious to me, though, that it kind of matched the old man's story about the Indian hiding the gold bars down the shaft and near this red hill, or thumb hill as the man called it. And this really didn't look like a thumb to me, but it certainly was hidden behind the other hill, and you couldn't see it from anywhere else until you got right on top of it. So it was really intriguing. So anyway, I got down in the hole and I started moving some of that cactus spurs and all the other crap that had kind of blown in there. And it was really loose and soft soil. And I just kept pushing it out with my hands. I had gloves, and push it out, push it out, push it out. And I had cleared at that point maybe like 2 feet, probably less than like 35 minutes or so. And I definitely knew it was shaft at this point. I'm like, wow, it's definitely a shaft. No one's been up here. This place hasn't been untouched for a long time. And I decide, I got to go back and get a shovel and some buckets and, going to do this right. So I go back down to the ATV, I go back to the camp, I grab a shovel, some buckets, more water, a sleeping bag, and a tent. Because, if I'm going to go back up there, I ain't going back down. So I take all that crap, I throw it in the ATV, grab some sardines, and we had some stuff at camp. I forgot what they had, some burritos or something. I grabbed some of those and some snacks and went back up there. And this is summertime, so it's days are long. It doesn't get dark until 9 o'clock. And, I climb back up the hill. I set up my tent, and, it's still like 8 o'clock. I start digging in there again. I make another 2 feet. I'm really making some headway now. And I'm like, this is looking really good. There's definitely something here. Can't be that much further down, or I don't really know, but I start digging some more. It's getting darker, and I decide, okay, let's stop, take a break, have some water. My tent's already set up, and I'm just sitting in the opening of the tent, kind of off to the edge of the side of the hill, the slope, so I could I had a nice lookout point over Caballo Lake, and I could see the lights of Truth or Consequence in the background. And, it's getting cold in the desert, even though it's so hot in the afternoon. As the sun's setting, and the sun, definitely the hill in front of me blocked the light pretty quick from the one angle that I was on. So I had a partial light, that was coming still, because it wasn't totally dark. But I'm just sitting there, minding my own business, and stars are out. It's actually beautiful. And I'm kind of whooped from the excitement of climbing up and down that hill twice. So with that, I decided get some rest, and I'm up crack of dawn the next morning. I can't wait to get back in there and start doing this. So I climb up, get up in the morning, take care of some breakfast, and make a little coffee, a little campfire and some coffee, jet boil. And then, I get to it. And as I start cleaning out more of this hole and more of this hole, more of this hole. And I'm now putting it in a compound bucket, filling it up, and then heaving it up over the edge and throwing it over the edge. And it's so steep on the front side that, as I throw it up and over, a quarter of it's coming back in the hole. It's starting to piss me off. So I had to build a little wall up there to keep the sand and crap from falling back in the hole every time I threw it out. So I spent a little time making a little castle wall up there and a little rampway for me to get in and out, and then continue throwing the soil out. And I start to see that the top of the rock on the bedrock side is starting to scoop under itself, like it's going to go into a tunnel. Now I'm getting like super excited. And I shovel and I shovel and I shovel and I shovel all this stuff out of there. And now I'm standing in the hole. It's like 7 feet over my, I'm in a 7-foot hole. I can reach my hand up and just barely touch the edge of the rock wall piece that I have up there. And now I can't fill the buckets up too much. I only have 2 buckets. But I can't fill them up because I can't get them out over my head and dump them before they fall back on me. And the soil is so loose, I can't leave a little chunk in there that I can stand on to make myself a little taller. So I'm only filling them like halfway and then heaving them up at the hole. And I got to climb up, dump them out, and go back down, fill them halfway. So I'm doing that, and then finally I start to see the top of this shaft or this tunnel that's going to go in sideways underneath the rock mound itself. It's heading in that direction. And I'm down on my hands and knees, and it's all backfilled in there, right to the top of the ceiling, except for maybe 8 inches of space. And that goes in I could see 3 or 4 feet further back, and it kind of starts to slough off and go downhill. And I'm, impatient, and there's nowhere to put all that dirt without taking it all the way out. So I put the bucket in front of me, in front of my face, in front of my head. I get down on my hands and knees, and I start bulldozing the sand forward into the space so I can make enough space for my body to fit between the roof of the ceiling and the top of the pile. That's working. I'm pushing and pushing and pushing. And now I spin around and I'm kicking the sand in so that it makes enough space. And finally, I have enough space. I got about 18 inches, and it's just about a little bit wider than the bucket. And I keep pushing it in, and finally we slide down, me and the bucket, we slide down a little ramp on the inside of all the soil that kind of just sloughs off there. And I stop, and now, of course, from all the kicking, it's sand and dust and crap all over the place, and there's mouse poop and cactus parts that were in there before all that sand actually came in there. And I'm sitting there, and I look around, and it's maybe 3.5 foot, 4 foot ceiling, maybe 5.5 feet wide, 6 feet or so, and it goes back maybe 10 feet, and then I see another hole going down. I see just back straight, and then the floor is missing, back there, another shaft. I'm like, oh, cool. I start scooching over to there, and I shine the light down the shaft, and as I look down it, there's a chicken ladder in it. This piece of telephone pole or a piece of wood or ironwood or something, it's only 8 inches round. It's got notches cut in it, and it's leaning up against the sidewall, one side of the hole. At the bottom of it is just sitting on the rock base below it, but 3 or 4 more inches further, and then there's another shaft right there. And the edge of that little thing looks like, if I step on it the wrong way, it's going to kick out, and I'm going to go either flat down on my face and fall on the log, or, it could slip off, and I could possibly slip down the shaft because I didn't know how far that went. But I saw the chicken ladder, and I was extremely excited because it's really old. You got a chicken ladder in there. Probably was put in by the Indians or maybe the Spanish or something. And now I'm super stoked. I'm like, man, this could actually be the place. And I climb down the chicken ladder very carefully. It drops off maybe 6 feet, 7 feet. And then I'm standing on that ledge, and I'm shining my light down this shaft. And the shaft goes down maybe 20, 25 feet, kind of twists a little bit to the left, and so I can't really see the bottom of it. And it's only maybe 3 feet, 2.5, 3 feet wide any which way. It's all craggly and kind of bumpy. I have no ropes with me, and there's no ladder in there, so I'm like, well, I kind of lower myself down off the edge and kind of start, pressing my back up against one side of the hole and my feet up against the other side and my hands. And then I start just kind of shimmying down the hole using my feet and hands and back up against the wall. And I kind of get around that little corner and I see that it drops down to, I don't know, once I get around to the left a little bit, it kind of corkscrewed a little bit. And I look down, it's maybe like another 6 or 7 feet, and there's just like a sand down, the same stuff that I dug through. And I don't see any tunnel or anything else. So, I get down a little closer, and then I'm about 3 feet away from it. And then I just, kind of pulled my feet back and kind of let go and jumped into it. And when I did, I heard a hollow thud sound. And I'm like, oh, first I got a little nervous because I was afraid that it might be like a false floor in a mine. But then I remembered the old man telling me that the Indian had put these ironwood boards over the gold that he put in there. And now I was like super excited. But now I'm down a 20-foot hole, very narrow, with, I guesstimated about 3 feet of sand, maybe 2.5 feet of sand in that hole that was covering up that hollow thud board. And, you know what that meant. That meant I had to climb back out of there and go back and get some more supplies, like rope and a little pulley and, all kinds of other stuff I would need now to move these buckets of sand up out of the shaft into the main shaft and then out the front door. And what I decided to do was not take it out the front door. I just brought it up to where the rampway was that I had slid down into. And I had about maybe 10 or 15 feet of space there before it got to the edge of the hole. So I just kept dumping it there. And, of course, it was dusty and just really crappy working conditions. Really hot, 100 degrees during the day, and just dry. But I was so excited, and I kept taking my metal detector down there and kind of hitting it over those wood and hoping that I would get a hit, but I didn't get anything. And it was kind of disheartening, but I'm like, there's definitely wood here. I could hear the thudding. It's got to be some hollow space underneath it. And finally, I got all that sand cleaned out of there. It was probably about a yard of sand, and it took a while. It took me almost a day and a half to get it all up and out into just the rampway. And I was pretty beat. But there was, lo and behold, these planks under there, and I'm like, this has got to be it. Pull up those planks, and the hole drops down another 10 feet. But it's clear. There's no sand in it. And then it turns and goes to the right. There's a tunnel that goes off the bottom of it. And I'm like, all right, this has got to be it. So I pull that board back and kind of prop it up. And I have the rope there already. So I lower the rope down, climb down the rope. And I get to the bottom, get on my hands and knees. Now there's this like 3-foot round half-pipe tunnel there. And it goes back maybe 10 or 12 feet, and I can see that it opens up into a room or something, or a bigger space in there. So I crawl through this hole, and I get into this space, and now this space is like, I don't know, maybe 12 by 12 space, and I can stand up in it. It's about 6.5 foot tall in the center. And off to one side, there was this little, like, a reel that maybe detonation cord or something would have been on, like a wood spool. And it was sitting there like a table. And on that table was 2 Schlitz beer cans and a newspaper from 1950. And that was my treasure. So I had gone all that way to be beat out of whatever treasure was there. And I have to believe that this was the right location. And seems like somebody from 1950s beat me to it. But they were nice enough to leave me 2, which would have been full beers of Schlitz in a can, and the newspaper. And I thought that was pretty funny. The beer, I don't know what happened to the beer. The cans were still closed, but the beer, they were empty. I couldn't really see any holes in them, but must have expanded and came out somewhere. But the cans were pretty cool. I hadn't seen Schlitz beer cans that old in a while, so I took them with me, but I did leave the newspaper behind for the next guy, and climbed up out of there, and filthy and dirty, but kind of felt satisfied that I had at least found this location that was supposed to be a myth, and went through all the trouble of trying to uncover it for 2 empty beer cans and a newspaper. But have to imagine that the treasure might have been in there at some point in time. I was just about, I don't know, 40 years late. So even more than that, I guess, because this is probably around 2010. And that was a 1957 newspaper, so had to be 50 some odd years late. But hey, it's the adventure, not always the treasure. And I still look at that. I still have those 2 cans, so if that's any consolation. But it's another one for the books. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and looking forward to tell you next week's treasure. So you guys have a good night. Bye-bye.